welcome Coenraad and Jaco. I think you initiated this conversation, so I think Coenraad from CRI, please just quickly introduce yourself, and then Jaco, will you also introduce yourself, and then why are we sitting around this table? Because it sounds like it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Thanks, Dewald. Coenraad Fraenkel, Extension Manager for the Western Cape and Northern Cape with CRI, and the last couple of years now focusing on irrigation, and realized that after our irrigation courses that we implement around the country, that seeing some success stories in the industry, and was speaking to Jaco and realized that there's definitely a message to convey of just keeping back to the basics, because we all know irrigation being very important, but it's amazing to see the plans that are being made on farm level, taking the information that we convey with farmers and then actually making it really practical, which I think is important to share with the rest of the industry, that it is doable. It's not CRI's information, not always just huge amounts of information that's not always implementable. And he actually made a really good plans to actually implement some of the information that we gathered.
Yeah, thanks. Morning, everyone. It's Jaco Lindeque. I'm the production manager at Groep 91 Citrus. We're based in Letsetele. And I met Coenraad through the CRI workshops, and obviously with all the information that he gives us in workshops, you can see that irrigation is a real passion for him, and the same for me. So we're actually having a lot of discussions around irrigation and see that our strategies are aligned in a big way. And I think the big purpose of this talk is to just put it out there that irrigation management is really simple if you do the basic things right and you start with the proper plan, and that you have a method to audit that plan and on a continuous basis.
So I think importantly it's start where you were before you thought maybe I should try these things. What was the circumstances, and then what did you do, and what was the outcome?
So maybe I can start with what your question, just to line it up for Jaco, is Hannes Bester, our National Extension Manager, has for many years said that irrigation is the one thing that we are not getting right in South Africa, and it's causing a massive amount of repercussions. So in the last 12 months, we had about 4 cases where we had underperforming trees, and we had to go out because of the producers would say it's Phytophthora or other secondary diseases and pests and so forth. And it all came back to trees being over-irrigated, and then we sorted that out. It immediately took pressure off the rest of the things. So me and Peter Raad, which is a pre-harvest researcher at CRI, he put it together a list asking consultants and people working in the industry, listen, if we take a few aspects like plant growth regulators, like pest and disease management, pruning, irrigation, and nutrition, and so forth, and out of a point of 100, what would you say is the important, which has the biggest effect on fruit quality and yield? And of all those consultants, most of them at least said 40% is determined by irrigation. So we started out putting out courses, going back to the basics, because people want a quick fix. I think it's the generation where we are. They think that if they can put in a probe, that thing will tell you exactly what you need to do. And the technology gets a bad name. So that got out, and we started giving practical courses all over the country. We probably trained 600, maybe more producers and consultants last year, and it was really simplified. Going into the field, making profile pits and looking at the roots and so forth, and that started stimulating the discussions. But one of the things that we said is, if you don't have a soil auger on your farm, that's such a simplified tool to use. Go see what reality is, because a probe you have one measurement on an orchard, but a auger you can actually take different positions. And
so the probe would be in one row in a block.
Exactly.
And maybe if you're lucky, another one.
Yeah, such a small representative sample of what actually goes on in your orchard. Yeah. So, like Coenraad said now, yes, the soil auger, such a practical tool to implement. It is something that you can very easily distribute throughout your whole farm. And it gives you the ability to move around in your orchard, different soil types. So it also forces you to actually know your orchards very well, because it depends on where you do your augers and how regularly you do them, and what data do you gather while doing an auger.
And while you're there, you also see, well, here's a problem.
Exactly.
There's something wrong. We need to fix this.
So there was a few observations. I don't want to speak out of your mouth, but there was a few other observations that you made, not only just augering, but you mentioned that actually gave you a lot of other information as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you must realize that people resources are expensive, so you need to tap into them as productively as you can. So when we do soil augers, there's a whole list of data that we additionally capture. Not only just your normal field tests on 3 depths throughout your profile, but also the amount of fine roots that you extract and at what depth do they stop. That gives you a great indication of how healthy your root system is. And a thing that a probe, for instance, can never indicate to you is are you irrigating at the right pressures? Because that is in essence the fundamental thing of irrigation that you need to get right is, am I irrigating at the right pressures? Am I putting down the water that I think I'm putting down? And
the fertigation together with
immediately affects your nutrition as well. So yeah, 100%.
So we use our soil auger system to gather additional data to really get a holistic picture of what is actually going on in our orchards. And there's on our production, there's a direct correlation in the number of soil augers we did within a certain period. Normally my crucial period, I take it from the 1st of September to the end of December. Normally that's when our rainy season is in full swing. So what happens before that is absolutely crucial for us. So we have some nice statistical data on the number of soil augers we did per hectare and the improvement in yield that you can actually quantify over 2 or 3 seasons.
So a question on that is, okay, you're saying you've taken a number of soil augers. Do you send the samples away? Is it something you can test on farm? Is it just physical attributes of the soil that you can see?
Yeah.
Because obviously if you've got to send it away to the diagnostic center, there's a cost involved.
No, that's the beauty of this whole system is you have no additional expenditure other than your labor cost and the cost of actually buying a soil auger.
And the labor is there anyways.
Yeah, so it's a simple, well-defined rating systems for different soil types, which is standardized on all our production units, and it's standards we adopted from the CRI. So it's zero cost, and I think just tongue in cheek, why producers or consultants lastly go to irrigation as your main fix for problems is because that's where real ownership kicks in. Because if you start taking ownership of your irrigation practices and the way you do your irrigation, then you can actually take ownership of your result as well, other than look into the eyes of some fancy chemical or whatsoever. Yeah.
I've been listening to what you're saying now, and it sounds very interesting. And we are at the symposium, and we've heard a lot of talk about the very sophisticated ag tech. And so many people are used to farming is kind of ended up on your cell phone a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is something that's as old as time itself. Check the soil.
Yeah.
Check the soil. And an auger, it's not automatic, it's not electronic.
No.
It requires you to put in a bit of elbow grease and turn it and actually get the soil out and just do the old-fashioned important stuff.
Yeah, so that's actually it's an interesting observation. So yeah, you still need to do the work. It's how you capture the data where AgTech really comes in to really make it real time accessible for all relevant parties. So yeah, you actually still need to do the physical work, But using technology, you can make it much more transparent and real time, and that's something that we do. So the platforms that we use to capture this data really brings it alive on a real time basis.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was in Zimbabwe 2 weeks ago with Wayne Momsen, one of our other extension managers, and we were giving training there. And one of the producers said to me, "Listen, Coenraad, why are you so against probes?" I said, I'm against probes or technology, but wearing a sports watch, it's not going to make you run the marathon.
It'll make you
It's
fitter.
not going to make you an extreme athlete. You have to
Yeah.
go out and have to go actually exercise, and so it's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing.
Yes.
So the ag tech tends to get a bad rap. It's actually just measuring,
Yes.
and you need to do an interpretation. But if you're not in your orchards, you don't know your soils, you don't know your farm, then you're going to actually interpret it wrongly, and you're going to actually give
Yes.
the fault to the technology, which is unfortunate.
Yes.
So in that sense, we try to get back to the basics and get the basics right, which Jaco is doing fantastically, and it brings a lot of other dynamics in. Like we've said, the past with our trainings is look into runoff. Are you seeing crusting? Are you seeing, like you said, is the pressures right? Because there's a design of that for that irrigation system, and if that pressure's not right, you can never calculate really what's going on. Like while the guys are there, they can pick up that there's blockages on your lines. There's a lot of other observations that a probe would never be able to tell you, and just forces you to actually make that fine observations.
Yeah, so just to come in here, also, Coenraad said now the probe is telling you how to irrigate. We talked about ownership, about your irrigation and your production strategies. You will find in a lot of cases that people or producers who are reliant heavily on their probe data is also reliant on a consultant giving them irrigation recommendations who's not stationed on the farm. And don't get me wrong, there is very knowledgeable guys out there, but you need to take ownership about on your result. So we also rely on probes. We implemented a big rollout of probes throughout all our production units, but for different reasons. So we use our probe data to audit our actual irrigation plan, and that's where it all starts. You need to have a plan for a certain soil type, for a certain size tree, for a certain period that you are in. So have the plan, and then you have your independent monitoring of a probe in the soil. It just measures what happens around it, and you can actually go and see the strategy that you wanted to implement. Was it done according to your plan? And then you bring in the actual elbow grease, go and see what's the result, because it takes time to understand your things like probes or tensiometers. It really takes time, multiple seasons to understand what you are seeing. But a soil sample taken in the orchard, it's immediate. There's no intricate way to interpret it. It is what it is.
So
Sorry, just a question I had something that you mentioned today too, guys. That I don't want producers to think, but you're farming in Letsatele and it's better soils and that's easy. You actually mentioned that it was on your worst, horrible, very high clay soils that we actually focused on, and you had the results.
Yeah, it is basically, if I wasn't converted, I am now in our strategies and the things that we implemented. There's a saying that you irrigate for your poorest soil type, water holding capacity, but in this instance, we have an orchard with 40+% clay in it, and we really implemented a simple irrigation strategy that is manageable, and the guy in the orchard can execute 7 days a week, and we had exceptional results on that orchard for multiple seasons in a row now.
So that's the question. You can say all these wonderful things, but it's got to come back down to what's coming into your pocket. What has been those results? Did your production increase? Did your costs come down? What happened there?
Yeah, so I think it's a multi-answer. Obviously, first and foremost is production went up. and that's what pays for all of the things that we do. But also, if you look at the resources, our water resources is managed better. We're definitely not over-irrigating, so we're not wasting water. If we're not wasting water, we're definitely not wasting fertilizer. And if you look at what we are facing now in agriculture with load shedding and varying power supply, you still need to irrigate. So if there's no electricity, you're going to burn diesel. So you need to really spend that money wisely. So by monitoring on your orchards continuously, you actually know where to really you are shooting with a rifle and not a shotgun. And so it's a multi-faceted answer, but long and the short is yes, production went up, but there's a big knock-on effect if you look at it holistically.
Well, it's fantastic to hear that the knowledge transfer from CRI interventions and, you going and teaching people and telling them that it is literally bearing fruit. And, by listening to it and implementing it, you've seen such a success. It's good news.
Do you guys use drip irrigation or microjet?
No, so we are all on microjets. We don't do drip irrigation. It's not a common thing in Letsitele. Just based on the climate that we have, it's not as suitable for drip.
And just the thing is what we're having at the moment, we're seeing, and we're going into the next session now with the symposium that's focused on our pre-harvest research, and Peter Raad is also conducting some research on water use efficiencies and nutrient use efficiencies, because that is where our retailers and our markets is actually the needs is going to go to. But you can't go and just say we're going to do research on nutrient use efficiencies if a large part of the industry is actually putting a lot of their fertilizers through the irrigation system. If you don't get your irrigation right, then automatically your nutrient use efficiency is going down the drain as well. So that's why we're focusing and starting on that. And Louise, like you're saying, with the knowledge transfer, I think we as CRI, and I can only say from the extension side, we sometimes when we give information, are we really making impact there? We hope we do. We just want to become professional presentation makers or whatever the case may be. But hearing this, it's encouraging to know that you don't have to get fancy. You can go back to the basics. There's so much that we can actually, without spending so much money, we can actually make a difference. And I think that was what that really encouraged me. So I must congratulate you. I think you are pioneering stuff and really trying to stick to the basics.
It's not pioneering stuff. It's implementing old stuff.
And
now it looks
going
like
back
it's
to the basics.
Yeah, so simple strategies is
right.
executed well is better than going the fancy route.
There's also another saying that a farmer's footsteps is the best fertilizer for his orchard
100%.
or land or whatever.
100%.
So if you're walking around with that auger and you're seeing things, as opposed, as you say, the probe definitely has its place. But if you add the auger along with it, then you're definitely going to see all the stuff along the way to where you're going to the auger holes.
Yeah, it's a knock-on effect.
Yes.
It is focusing on the right things.
Yeah, and what I must say from Jaco as well is that since I've met him now, is implemented a type of strategy where he would say, these are the 5 things in this orchard, which I think if I can get these 5 things right, you can take this orchard from a middle class of a middle performing one to a really top performing one. And he's did the same strategies with his pruning, and he's taken the irrigation now, and that immediately has a ripple effect on the next stuff and the next stuff. So I think that's the right way to get going in the right direction, and sticking to the basics and taking one thing every year, which is fantastic.
Yeah, we have a so I can't say it now on air, but we have a plan. We have a saying about having a plan, even if it's a poor plan. That's not the actual words we use, but it starts there.
Yeah.
Just to have a plan, and like Coenraad said, now you need to have a plan for every aspect, but don't complicate it. Okay. Try and fix the basic things first. And then in the end, you'll actually see that your result is improving. And by having a simple plan and executing it well, and having the discipline to actually audit your execution, is, if you look at those three things, if your result is then positive, yes, then you know what you did right. If your result is not good, then you can have then you have the data to pull it apart and to say, well, this is probably where it went wrong, and then you know what to fix. But if you don't have the plan, then yes, you are shooting in the dark.
Okay, so what you're saying is actually that monitoring of that, capturing that data and actually storing it and be able to reconcile at the end of the season, what are you seeing and how can you adjust, is just as important as actually implementing a plan. Otherwise, you don't know if something went wrong. Eh?
Yeah, so the easy thing is to achieve a good result. That's easy. You will just throw the kitchen sink at it, and then you achieve a good result. But the trick comes in to repeat it. And if you don't have your plan and you didn't monitor your execution, when it comes to the repetition, you are back at square one. And that is where we are now with this 2-year journey where we are on. Is our execution, our planning for the coming season is simplified, and because you have the blueprint. Well, touch it, you have the blueprint of how you got to a certain result, and now you can just keep on repeating it, and it's the simple things,
Sure.
according to me.
Oh, right.
Very, very interesting.
Yes.
Just on a closing, in walking all these orchards in Letsatele, how many lions and hippos and mambas have you stumbled into?
So the lucky thing for me is I'm not actually one doing the soil augers anymore. I'm just the one thinking out the strategy. But yeah, there's been a few instances. Not lions, but definitely snakes and hippos. We've seen them, yeah.
Yeah, called sustainable orchard security.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, thank you so
Working
much.
with nature.
It's been incredibly interesting and inspiring. And thanks for sharing with us. And so you see, when you go out there and you do your presentations, you're making a difference.
Definitely making a difference. Now, Coenraad and his team is doing a real good job, and my wish for him and his team is that we can just get the industry behind these guys, to really take what they say to heart and to implement it, and support them there where we can. I think it's a support function for us as producers, but we need to reciprocate that to see when we are the guys actually doing the work.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.